In another, Wu posted an image of himself boarding a private charter plane, followed immediately by a request for donations. Fighting for Texas. Give me a break, Gene Wu.
We are challenging efforts to suppress or dilute the vote. We are attacking illegal race-based gerrymandering.
Nice.
And we are protecting ballot access for all Americans.
Transgender for everybody, all of the horrible things that they've done. High taxes, horrible medical provision for people. We've watched them destroy our country for 4 years.
The Supreme Court of Texas now ordering the Democrats to respond, or else this case might proceed without them, as typically happens. Now, here's what Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, said as it relates to the fleeing Democrats. Says the Texas Supreme Court has now ordered the runaway ringleader of the derelict Democrats to respond to my lawsuit by Friday, the end of this week. They better get on it. Here's what the Supreme Court said. All right, the Supreme Court of Texas now requests that Gene Wu, the derelict Democrat extraordinaire, that he file a response to the petition for a writ of quo warranto in the above referenced case. The response is due to being filed no later than 5 p.m. Friday, August 8th this week. Please know, you got to file through efiletexas.gov. Hey, don't send it into my inbox. I don't want to read it. So Blake, put it in the e-file. And so this came to the Supreme Court. They said, you have jurisdiction to issue a writ of quo warranto to bring them back or to hold them invalidated, as they'll be asking for. Here's the question. Did Gene Wu, who's been ordered to respond to this, has he forfeited the office of the state, and has he created a vacancy that we can refill? What's at stake here, writes Greg Abbott? Nothing less than the future of Texas and maybe America. If a small fraction of recalcitrant lawmakers choose to run out the clock today, they can do so for any reason. And every regular or special session, they can do it, potentially bankrupting the state in an attempt to get their way, like whiny babies. That means every state budget could be held hostage until the whims of a small fraction of these legislators is satisfied. It doesn't have to be that way. The rarely used writ of quo warranto exists to solve rare problems such as this. And this court exists to solve cases with ramifications far beyond the individual parties to the case. And so here too, the court's decision will determine if only 1/3 of the legislature can dictate everything. It's tyranny of the minority. The outcome for 100% of Texans, just if they all get together and abandon ship, then that's the end of governance in Texas, I guess. No one can do anything. Fearing one of 18 items on the special session agenda, there's a bunch of other items there, but this is the one they care about, raw power. They don't really care about flood victims or anything, even though they say they do regularly. If they did, they wouldn't be Democrats. Democrat members of the Texas House claim an entitlement to abdicate their official duties by refusing to show up for work, to deprive the House of a quorum necessary to conduct business because the vote may not go their way. And this is coming out of Gene Wu. He recently fled the state, and he continues to remain absent to this day. Now, these members have abandoned their official duties, which are required by the Constitution, which would allow legislation to pass in a 30-day session that is vital to Texas's needs. We got flood relief, we need property tax relief, public school reforms. Think about the children. Public records, writes Greg Abbott and his team, suggest that the absconding Democrats who fled even solicited money to pay the fines incurred for their absence. The problem here is that the harm these members have inflicted can continue perpetually, indefinitely, for as long as they want to hang out with Pritzi. They may return from a quorum break for a few days and then abscond once again. Oh, we don't like that again. Let's go back on a cruise. Go on a cruise with Fannie Willis and Nathan Wade. Does not please them is to put to a vote. The only check on this hijacking, the only mechanism that we can do to continue government when they leave, beyond the reach of in-state compulsion tools, is quo warranto. Now, if representatives are free not to show up whenever they choose, well, that means Texans simply don't have a representative government, because we don't have representatives. In fact, they don't have a functioning government at all. This court should make clear that a legislator who does not wish to perform his duties will be stripped of them. It's pretty easy. You don't show up for work, you're fired. That's how it works for everybody else in the whole world. The regular session of the 89th Texas legislature concluded on June 2nd, 2025. And so what happened after that? Not long ago. Abbott, he came out, he issued a proclamation announcing a special session to begin Monday, July 21st, and identifying 18 items for consideration. Now, much of this is talking about the flooding, tax cuts, the elimination of the STAR test. And the governor also said, guys, while you're doing all of this, like in the special session, you should also just take a little look at the congressional redistricting plan, which I'll just email over to you right now. Now, legislators are elected to represent their constituents in Texas. When the governor calls a special session, the Constitution says, Article 3, Section 5, the legislature shall meet. Do you see that, Gene Wu? Showing up to conduct legislative business is not cast by the Constitution as optional, like you can go hang out with other governors in blue states like Hochul, who's going to declare war. Instead, by using the word shall, the Constitution imposes a mandate. While the Constitution does anticipate an inability to make a quorum, it does not suggest that an intentional lack of quorum by fleeing out-of-state Democrats can be used to violate the constitutional mandate. It says shall meet. They're not doing that. Historically, legislators have taken extreme measures to live up to this requirement, including one who, in defiance of doctor's orders, installed a gurney just off the Senate floor to ensure he could represent his constituents and fulfill his primary constitutional duty. It's amazing, that dude. He's like on the verge of death. He's like heart monitors beeping out. He's like, any final words? Nay. And then he dies, and that's the final vote. Amazing. That's what we're talking about. That's what we want. We want our government, our governors, to be interested in the job and actually do the job and do it well, actually. To ensure legislators honor this duty, the House adopted rules providing that members can be fined $500 for each calendar day in absence. And now they're taking money from other individuals that nobody really knows about where the money's coming from, and they're taking private jets to Illinois. Any fines must be paid out of their personal funds. They should not be paying for this out of their political contributions, so their constituents are paying their fines. Almost immediately after Abbott issued his proclamation calling for a special session, the Texas Democrats, including Gene Wu, began discussing the possibility of breaking quorum. They said, we don't like this. Reports indicate that to facilitate that effort, some Democrat members sought to bankroll their obstruction with the backing of big dollar Democrat donors who would cover the expenses as a benefit if they avoided a vote. I'm sure many out-of-state dollars are flowing in. Meanwhile, other House members, the Republicans, they dutifully went about their work. They showed up to their jobs. Wow, shocking. Now, on August 2nd, the House Select Committee on Congressional Redistricting conducted its 5th hearing and voted favorably. We're going to be advancing the redistricting legislation. It's going to go to the full House, and it's going to pass. So then we scheduled it August 3rd and August 4th. But within hours after the calendars were posted, Chairman Gene Wu of the House Democratic Caucus boarded a chartered plane for Chicago, Illinois, ran away like a little baby, apparently provided as a benefit to withhold their vote and to deny a quorum in the legislature, and fled the state with many other members of the House Democrat Caucus. They're going on a field trip to one of Pritzker's hotels because they're public servants who are serving you, America. It says publicly available statements indicate that Wu deliberately fled the state to abandon his official duties indefinitely. Yeah, I mean, who paid for that flight? What was that chartered plane? Where'd that come from? Was that from Pritzy? He also solicited money from individuals and organizations both inside and outside Texas to fund the violation and his absconsion and to skip a vote in Texas. Here's what happened. Gene Wu first planned not to show up for work for the specific purpose of abdicating his duties. Anybody else anywhere would be fired instantly. Oh, you're actually intending to obstruct the functioning of this entity? You're gone. Weeks earlier, Wu traveled to California and Illinois to strategize with those states' governors, Pritzker's bosom event, including attending meetings to determine where lawmakers could stay because they're fleeing Holocaust conditions, according to one of them, out of state while denying the Texas House a quorum. He was committed to going where the governor has no power to reach into other states because they're in exile, and remaining there for one purpose. They want to kill the special session and stymie a vote on the new maps. The idea is they're trying to run the clock out, so the special session will have an end date on it, and that end date will expire, then they'll come back after that. Now, after leaving the state, Wu said, this corrupt special session is over. And he posted that on X, it looks like, somewhere. And he said, after leaving the state, Wu also claimed that we're now blocking the proposed congressional map, right? Here's what Gene Wu, Texas Democrat, fleeing Democrat. He said, as of today, this corrupt special session is over. House Democratic leader Gene Wu, because they've all abandoned their state. Second, writes Abbott, to the Texas Supreme Court, Wu has indicated that in his absence from the state, it's indefinite. We don't know when he's coming back. There's no end date on this. When asked how long he would stay out of the state, question in quotes, he stated that his commitment to this is one day at a time, and we're going to deal with this special session. Now, obstructing only the current special session will surely not be enough for him, given the governor's ability to call subsequent special sessions. And so, according to one major news outlet, Wu suggested that the walkout could last through the rest of the 30-day session, which was scheduled to end in late August, and possibly beyond. He likes it up there in Illinois. He doesn't really like Texas. They're not really his people. The Pritzker clan is. Third, Wu has openly solicited and accepted funds funds and other consideration for violation of his legislative duties. Look at this guy. They think they're such heroes. Look, this is how they act and think. They think they're like saving democracy. It's really kind of embarrassing for themselves. On the ground in Chicago, fighting for the rights of Texans and all Americans. Then what are you doing in Chicago, Gene? Why'd you flee your state? Pathetic. So Gene Wu, he posts, images of himself like they're heroes, like, a little sunset in the background. Wow, heroic. Third, Wu is openly solicited and accepted funds. He says, support Texas and help us not do our jobs. In another, Wu posted an image of himself boarding a private charter plane, followed immediately by a request for donations. Fighting for Texas. Give me a break, Gene Wu. Hey, please support our efforts. Donate. Give me some money. These are other libs outside of Texas who are going to be donating to him because they just want to stop Texas. That's what it's about. So that plane, it turns out, it came from Beto. It was a 76-seat private jet. Wow, that sounds nice. Man, it's good to be a fleeing Democrat. Taking Wu and other Democrats from Austin to Chicago on a flight that probably cost tens of thousands of dollars. It's like a slumber party of Democrats on a field trip like they're in the 8th grade, or they're like running away from home. Remember when you did that when you were 8 years old? Like, I'm leaving here, Mom, never coming back. She's like, have a nice life, son. Like, oh, well, that didn't work out. But we'll see if it works out for them. Now, a recent report indicates that the initial amount to get Wu off the ground, the initial plane, or the initial amount, so somebody paid for this. Guess who it was? It's Beto. Beto O'Rourke, his political action committee. In addition to offering the initial dollars, they also offered extensive public relations resources and a dedication of all donations to the Democrats, but only if they break the quorum. Isn't that fun? So Texas Supreme Court, says Abbott, enough of this. Review is urgently needed. Under our Constitution, the current special session must end on August 20th, and so the clock is ticking. Wu and his colleagues waited until just over 2 weeks remained, and then they were trying to run the clock out. They carried out a premeditated effort to thwart their defined constitutional duty, shall meet and conduct the business of the House. Wu's gambit threatens to run the clock out not only on this session, but any future sessions too. And so you, Supreme Court of Texas, you have jurisdiction to entertain this case. The legislature is authorized. The law says that you, this court, can issue all writs of quo warranto against state officers like Wu. And the merits of our claims are pretty straightforward. In fact, longstanding precedent recognizes that deliberate abandonment of office constitutes forfeiture of that office. You don't show up to work, you're gone. That's fine. We'll find someone else. You're not irreplaceable, Texas Democrats. Indefinite removal to another state for purposes of literally avoiding the constitutional requirement that says shall meet in there. Do you see that? The law means something. It says shall for a reason. It doesn't say you may meet, but only if you're happy with what's on the schedule and the agenda. Soliciting and accepting funds is also bribery because it's in exchange for something. It wasn't Beto's PAC just saying, you guys want to go to Chicago? No problem. We'll just fund it. It was in exchange for breaking quorum. Okay. Cited here, footnote 14 from this article. Houston Chronicle. Democrats who fled Texas racking up a huge bill. Who's paying for it? Probably the American people are, because a lot of the Democrat money comes from us. But Democrats redistrict funding, and they said they would fund it, but only if they broke quorum. Like, we'll pay for you to leave, but if you're not going to break quorum, we're not going to give you a free trip to Chicago. So they're paying in exchange for a deliverable of their political power. It's bribery out on its face, and they're calling it out. So here you see, to the Supreme Court, they say, it is clear that a member of the House of Representatives is an officer of the state government. And for more than a century ago, when describing the proper object for a quo warranto, this court held that the phrase must be given its plain meaning, okay? Similar to the comptroller of public accounts in another case, Wu is an officer in a branch of the state government whose duties extend to the transaction of business. He's invested with sovereign functions, and the oath of office says, and even classes members of the legislature alongside all other elected and appointed state officers. And so just as surely, this petition also concerns the subject of quo warranto proceedings. Now, Abbott does not seek to impugn the past acts of a government official. That's not what we're trying to do. Blame them for something in the past, whatever. It's not punishment. All we're trying to do is address the ongoing abuses of this public office by ousting the non-user. You can't just come in here and squat on a public office. Wu has abdicated his official responsibilities, rather post images on X. The governor is likewise the proper movement. This court has previously consulted the case law on this, and at least since the reign of the Tudors in England, the court agreed that this has been something that's happened for a long time. Wu's willful renouncing of his duties here because he wanted to not do his job is a public abuse of power in addition to it. None of the rules changed the analysis here that you might want to reference, and we have specific jurisdiction over it, saying Supreme Court, in other words, the people of Texas and the people's representatives, the law clearly expanded access to the writ of quo warranto by conferring additional authority on this court. The two proceedings may run concurrently, Chapter 66 may be invoked, and finally, this court should exercise its discretion to entertain this original petition. The court has treated its jurisdiction to kick them out as discretionary rather than mandatory, but like this other case in Texas, there are compelling reasons to exercise discretion to hear this now. Like, we don't need to go up through the other chains, file it in a lower level court, then go up to Court of Appeals, then get to the Supreme Court. We're going to do right now. Time is of the essence. Special session expires. Wu is in the middle of obstructing this right now. We got fast approaching midterm elections. All of this is meant to deny a vote as long as it takes by his own admissions. And second, we also contend that Wu is improperly holding office. And third, there are no disputed issues of fact. Wu may believe he's justified because he says stupid platitudes like this, quote, committed to saving this democracy by not doing his job from his elected constituents who put him there to do the job. But he cannot dispute the numerous public statements showing the bargain he struck in exchange for this. They've publicly stated they're leaving in order to abandon their positions. And so the writ of quo warranto is a tool for challenging improper usurpation of unelected office. You're not present, you're not in your position, declaring you're gone. Perhaps one familiar notion of usurpation is the pretender to the throne. This is somebody claiming an office that was never theirs. But there are more ways than one to abuse a public office. In fact, at common law, the writ of quo warranto lies also in the case of the non-user. So somebody who's claiming a position that they don't have or entitled to, but somebody who has that position who's not using it. An office could be forfeited by neglect. They talked about this in England. Now that remains the law in Texas. An office holder's right may be forfeited or lost by a non-user or misuser, though the party continues to assert it. Such non-use or misuse must be with actual or imputed intention on the part of the office holder to abandon and relinquish the office. Wu expressed his intention to abandon the office 3 times with no end in sight to any of it. And he openly acknowledges his abandonment of his official duties. He's accepting compensation in exchange for the abandonment and getting benefits in order to do that. Fleeing the sovereign territory he purports to represent, going over to Chicago. They write to the Supreme Court. Every elected officer of this state, including Wu, swears an oath. They all do it. Faithfully execute the duties of the office, unless the Democrats are going to give them private flights to Pritzkersville. The principal duty of a legislature is to actually show up. The quorum provisions further underscore attendance is not optional. It is an affirmative constitutional obligation. The Constitution authorizes the House to compel the attendance of absent matters and members. That power would be meaningless if members could just freely make themselves absent for political advantage without any consequence at all. Such actions also render meaningless the government's authority when it says the legislature shall meet. Like, why is that in the Constitution if it's not the law? Because it is the law. Now, Wu has openly renounced these mandates, and he is fleeing Texas in order to break quorum. He's trying to obstruct the proceedings, trying to paralyze the Texas House. And these are not just mere collateral consequences of his actions, okay? He didn't get hit by a bus and needed treatment in Chicago. He didn't turn into an alcoholic and abandon ship or something. He intentionally, the purpose of the trip is to willfully, intentionally flee. So that means that's abandonment. We can take that as indicia. Well, how do we know he's actually left his office and abandoned it? Well, because he said so. Yeah, but did he? Yeah, 3 times. No. Well, is he like, he just doesn't want to come back because he can't? No, he's leaving because he doesn't want to do the job. Literally, like he doesn't want to vote on the thing. Well, his job is to vote. Yes, that's right. And he doesn't want to do that. And that's why he left. And he said intentionally? Yeah, 3 times. Okay. Sounds like abandonment. Like, what more can you want from somebody? Accordingly, this scenario is entirely unlike the representative who unintentionally misses a vote or is forced to be absent, there you go, because of an illness or an emergency, absconding from the state during a constitutionally mandatory session, not for lawful cause, but for the exact purpose of subverting the legislature's ability to function. It's a flagrant violation of Gene Wu's oath, and it's an intentional abandonment of his constitutional duty under Texas constitutional law. Now, it's no answer for Gene Wu to say that he plans to continue serving as a representative representative from Chicago, his own statements and actions show a refusal to actually serve as a representative, okay? He can say whatever he wants, but he's not actually doing it. That's because what representatives do, their job, is to represent their constituents in the chamber in Texas, not in Chicago. They appear for a quorum. It's part of the job. They meet with other legislators in hearings. They speak with their constituents. They debate bills. And in the end, they vote their district. Now, neither the governor's special session call nor the House procedures has in any way deprived him of his duty to discharge these duties. Don't blame the Republicans because you don't want to show up. He's free to debate all of this. He can just show up and say, I object, and make your case, make your pitch, talk about American democracy, whatever. And he, of course, is free to vote against it. But he is not free to choose to be a legislator in name only and squat on a position who forgoes the constitutionally mandated tasks of actually legislating. Most people who repeatedly fail to show up for work get fired. Yes, public servants must be held to the same standard. Now, even though Wu continues to assert his office, he has functionally left it. And it's no answer that he could eventually be removed by the voters. Well, I'll just wait till the next election. If they don't like him, they'll just remove him. No, the damages he's causing and continues to cause are immediate and irreparable, extending beyond his district, impacting voters throughout the entire state. They're making the entire legislature come to a standstill. A voter in Lubbock, a voter in Dimebox, and a voter in Kerrville all have no recourse for Wu. They want their government to continue. Now, we also think that there is bribery, and his actions violate other provisions of the law. And since he's taking bribery in exchange for political decisions, that requires forfeiture of his entire office. Now, there is an especially good reason why bribery may form the basis of removal. Our Constitution seeks to root out bribery at practically every turn. The oath of office provisions, for example, obligate state officers to sign a statement swearing that they have not and will not exchange things of value for the giving or withholding of a vote, or withholding in italics. Only after filing that signed statement with the Secretary of State may legislatures members take the oath and swear in. So he signed that, okay? I'm not going to get anything of value in exchange for withholding a vote. Sounds like he's getting a lot of things of value in exchange for withholding a vote, including a trip on a private jet. Should they prove untrue to their word, the Constitution has more to say, including one of the penalties can be a forfeiture of their office. Now, in other words, the Texas Constitution makes forfeiture of office the default remedy for any legislator who accepts money or things of value in exchange for his vote, whether it's withholding or affirmatively voting. Either way, if you're in any way influenced by that thing of value, you're busted. And now it's up to the district attorneys to prosecute criminal bribery allegations, but hopefully they do. It's up to this court, however, to determine whether forfeiture of office has occurred under the Texas Constitution. Now, as this court recently reiterated, the same underlying conduct that could form the basis for criminal law may also serve as a predicate for removal of office. Wu's actions broke through that line at full speed. He never looked back. He's like, oh yeah, private jet? Yeah. You know, he's in first class up there. The whole thing, I guess, is first class. I don't know. I don't have any private jet experience, but he's probably up there. Yeah, I'll take another one. I'll take another one of those hot towels, please. Just, you know, I'll take some of that. Thank you. I'll have another one. Yeah, another spritzer would be great for Gene Wu. He never looked back. He's like, this is great. I love breaking quorum. Getting a foot massage. Now, as recounted above, Wu met with outside groups weeks in advance while planning to break quorum. He demonstrably accepted, quote, things of value, an expensive trip on a private jet to actually facilitate the withholding of his vote from Texas. He continuously solicited money, he posted about it, for himself and others in connection with the group's official action of breaking quorum. He did all of that in exchange for not doing his job. All he had to do was show up for the meetings, but he couldn't do that. So on their face, these actions violate Section 41 of the law. They could also constitute crimes. Any member who accepts or agrees to accept any benefit for not doing their job is guilty of a second-degree felony. We need a Texas Fannie. Where are you, Texas Fannie? Burst through the wall like the Kool-Aid guy. Namely, that legislatures shall meet when the governor calls a special session. Now, that is why the House rules impose fines for unauthorized absences. Using outside funds to end run the very penalties designed to secure compliance with duties is not merely unseemly. It's a violation of duty of the law privately being financed by Beto. Now, the Constitution says if any member of the legislature removes his residence from the district, his office is vacated, okay? If you're like Adam Pencilneck Schiff and you declare your primary residence is over in Maryland, what are you doing being a senator or a representative in California if you live in Maryland? Well, we know that they just try to have it both ways and just get cheap mortgages because they're fraudsters. Same thing happening here. If you're not in your district, get out of your office. Go represent somebody in Chicago if you love them so much. Texas courts have consistently interpreted removal of of residence, which is physical departure plus intent to remain away. Both of those sound pretty good. Now, ordinarily, temporary absences don't offend this provision. You go on a vacation, you go on a cruise. But in this case, a member of this legislature, Gene Wu, deliberately and indefinitely is departing from his district, and his intention, his express purpose is to sabotage our state Congress. He's also soliciting funds. He's trying to prolong that absence. Nothing happening here is ordinary. This self-imposed exile evidences no intention to return to his job, and the legislature can't work. So the effects of this vacancy, of all of this, is a vacancy in the office. Now, once again, it hardly matters on paper that Wu might have a homestead on file in Texas. Like, I got a residence there. At present, he has no stated intention of even returning here. He said it on his own. He's given, media interviews. Instead, he intends for Texas not to be his home for as long as this takes. That present intention is what matters. It's not like I have a backup plan for going to Texas at some point. You're out. You're not intending to come back. It's indefinite as it stands. So right now, you're gone. Now, his plan of fleeing for the remainder of this means we got to remove him quickly. So Texas Supreme Court, this case is not a political dispute, okay? It's a constitutional crisis happening right now that the Supreme Court of Texas can resolve. The current special session is set to expire in just 2 weeks, but Wu is not going to come back in those 2 weeks. Instead, he claims the special session is over. We're not coming back. Permitting him to continue to occupy his office so that he can abdicate his duties is only going to enable future legislators to grind this government to a halt in the future. Now, expect maybe someday the fleeing Democrats will return, and maybe they'll even be hailed as heroes who fought by fleeing. But in the meantime, okay, they are preventing the Texas legislature, duly called by the governor, from addressing the acute needs of Texas. Every day, the fleeing Democrats in their absence waste taxpayer dollars, imperils urgent policy needs, ranging from improved flood response tools to omnibus. Whenever the governor adds an item that they find offensive, they're just going to flee. If you don't do this, there's no end in sight to this piracy of our law. The Constitution, writes Abbott to the Supreme Court of Texas, nowhere envisions Texas signing on to that kind of suicide pact. Legislators may, of course, disagree on specific pieces of legislation, but our Constitution conceives of deliberation and debate as the official way to process official disagreements. That is why, in addition to laying out the order of business, there are mandatory duties the Constitution places on people so that they can abandon their jobs and paralyze the legislature without consequence. Now, this writ of quo warranto exists exactly for this reason, Supreme Court, and there's still time. You can use it. Save us now. Ordering Wu's removal from office would ensure that the public office remains a trust that's exercised in good faith, as opposed to some platform for private gain and private flights. It could also begin to make it easier to establish a quorum in the future, but above all, it's going to restrain the abuse. Refusing to address this problem now, Supreme Court, if you don't handle this right now, it's going to be a problem. The integrity of Texas's constitutional order demands urgent intervention, and we're asking for you to step in. Signed here by Governor Greg Abbott's team, Trevor Ezell, Joseph Banke, Jason Bramau, Caleb Gunnels, all shout outs to them out of Greg Abbott's office. So now Harmeet Dillon is also taking it in on the voting rights front. She has now announced new lawsuits are coming out saying we're suing a bunch of these other state jurisdictions that have fraudulent voter rolls and are refusing to remove non-citizens and are refusing to deduplicate things and clean up the mail-in balloting process and all the things. So there will be consequences for this. Harmeet Dillon looking into it.
Our constitutional duty is to protect the right to vote for all Americans. 60 years ago, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to confront the brutal reality that too many Americans were being denied their rightful access to the ballot. The Voting Rights Act came at a critical time in our nation's history and was the catalyst of necessary change. This landmark law removed barriers to voting. It outlawed poll taxes and literacy tests and gave the federal government the tools to stop discriminatory barriers at the ballot box. Today, under the leadership of President Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi, this Civil Rights Division is continuing to protect equal and transparent ballot access with vigilance and resolve. We are investigating violations of federal voting laws. We're ensuring that all 50 states have and continue to have clean voter rolls. We are challenging efforts to suppress or dilute the vote. We are attacking illegal race-based gerrymandering.
Nice.
And we are protecting ballot access for all Americans. We have sued jurisdictions such as North Carolina for not registering voters properly by first verifying their eligibility. We have notified Texas of grave concerns about congressional districts drawn with racial motivations, and we are suing other jurisdictions where there is evidence of ineligible voters on their voter rolls. Our job is to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. On this anniversary, we honor the Voting Rights Act, not just by remembering it, but by enforcing it for all Americans. And that's my promise to you.
Amazing. So Trump was asked about the redistricting battle in Texas, and here's what he said about it.
If Texas redrawing their congressional map would get you 5 safe red seats, means that California, New York, Illinois, and Maryland are all going to redraw their maps to add safe.
Well, they'll do it anyway.
Is it worth it?
Yeah, they'll do it anyway. Why? If we stop over there, they would have done it anyway. Look, a lot of these states, I watched this morning as Democrats are complaining, and they're complaining from states where they've done it, like in Illinois, like in Massachusetts. I watched this lunatic, Pocahontas. She's a total lunatic. I don't know what she's on. She's all jumping up and down like I've never seen anything like it.
She's crazy.
Talking about supporting the communist mayor. And he's not a socialist. He's a communist. Okay,
Commie
this is not
Mamdani,
a socialist man. This is a communist. If you look at any of his policies and go back 6 months, you don't even have to go back further than that. So they want to put a communist in New York. Now, the good news is we have a lot of power over that because we're the ones with the money. We send the money. We don't send the money. It's up to the White House. A lot of power in the White House. But when I watched her jumping up and down talking about that and supporting the communists, but if you look at what's going on with the redistricting or whatever you want to call it, the Democrats have done it long before we started. They've done it all over the place. They did it in New York. They did it in a lot of different states. But in Massachusetts, so somebody used this as an example today. I was interviewed this morning, and they said, it's pretty unfair. Trump got 40%. I'm not proud of that, but I think I probably got more, but that's okay. I got 40% in Massachusetts, and yet they have 100% of the vote in terms of Congress. So there's no Republican, there's no anything. So we should have 40%. You know why? They redistricted, and they've done it all over the place. And they've done it in California, by the way. Before this, they've done it in California. So we'll see what happens. We have a wonderful governor in Texas. He feels strongly about it. It's going to be up to him. I think there's tremendous support for it. And, we've watched the Democrats destroy our country in 4 years. They've destroyed between their open borders that we talked about, transgender for everybody, all of the horrible things that they've done, high taxes, horrible medical provision for people. We've watched them destroy our country for 4 years, and people don't want that. And people in Texas, as you saw, I got the highest vote in the history of Texas. I love Texas. Texas likes me, obviously, but I got the highest vote, and that was checked out on the show. Did you see that, where they checked it out? They said he actually did get the highest vote in the history of Texas, which disappointed them. They were very disappointed to hear that. But Texas is a place that's done very well with a free enterprise kind of an attitude, with the exact opposite of what's happening in New York with a communist mayor. And they know what they're doing.
All right, so we'll see what happens with the Supreme Court in Texas. They've given Gene Wu till Friday to respond to this. We'll keep our eye on it, but it's nice to see a red state playing hardball with the Democratic Party. Democrats throwing a hissy fit. We'll keep our eye on this one. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do.